this is one of the presentations that I feel it's important to me. And it's important to me because maybe it's important to you. It might not be. Some of you might just be like, oh, I just want to, listen and that's it. But some of you might be struggling with, is this for me? And there's conflicting information out there. There's wrong information out there. There's pressure from friends, from relatives. I had one woman tell me, my children are trying to make me into a druggie. And I don't think, and she was 94, so her children must have been in their 70s, I would think, but I do this one for people like that, people like you that really have those questions. And I want you to feel free to ask those questions, and I want you to understand that this is a non-biased presentation or an unbiased presentation. So one of the things, I have a couple little disclaimers. And one of the things is I am not affiliated with any marijuana related enterprise at all. So that would be CBD. I don't have any stake in any CBD companies. I don't like other companies that we do business with. I sometimes do business with them as well, or soup. I might come in here and endorse my own soup and try to sell it. I don't endorse anything here. This is completely, I try to be middle of the road, other than there are a couple pitfalls that I will be a little bit assertive about that I think you should avoid. But other than that, your mind is open, and I want it to kind of stay that way. That said, although I am extremely charming, I am not a doctor. So I'm not a nutritionist, and I'm not even a bud tender. And if you're not familiar with that term, that's what they call it. It's a bartender, bud tender, which I think is a great term. But I'm not even one of those. But what I do is I do my research. I keep current on things. I talk to people. I've toured marijuana facilities, grow operations. I have friends who work in the industry, and I stay connected with them. They kind of tell me what's going on, what's new coming down the road as far as research. And I'm happy to send you, like I said, the presentation. I'll actually send you an outline without all the pictures and stuff. But if you want the pictures, just tell me and I'll send you the pictures too. Happy to do it. All right, let's get going. So, are cannabis and marijuana the same? That's the first thing that we have to kind of figure out. The answer is no. So, well, the answer is really not quite. So, all marijuana is cannabis, but all cannabis is not marijuana. Right? So cannabis encompasses the whole plant, right? So it's all products derived from the cannabis sativa plant. So that could be hemp, it could be oil, it could be just a fragrance, it could be anything that they pull out of that plant. That's cannabis. The compound THC, that's marijuana. That's separate. That is what impairs you. That's what gets you, euphoric or, whatever it is, So you always want to remember that marijuana is cannabis, but all cannabis is not marijuana, okay? By the way, we use them interchangeably too. So, and I'll probably do that, I'll slip back and forth, but, as long as we understand at the outset, what it is. So, cannabis, see again, I just did it right there. Actually, the marijuana in parentheses should come out. So cannabis refers to the dried flowers, leaves, stems, and seeds of the cannabis plant. So that's all of it. All right. It contains 100 more, probably, compounds, or what they call cannabinoids. And we're going to talk about those quite a bit. But those compounds include THC, so that's one they pull out of it, and CBD. So that's the one that doesn't impair you, that they're saying has some, medical benefit and all that stuff. There's a third one now, CBN, which we'll be talking about. It's a little later in the presentation. And that one is a cannabinoid that's more around sleep and anxiety, even though the other two are used for that as well. So, and again, we'll get into it. And if this is, if it sounds confusing, it's okay. Like, it's new to some people. So you'll get it as we go forward. So you just want to remember that CBD is not impairing like the other one. All right. So how is cannabis ingested? So the first thing is I was just about to say the most popular is smoking, but it's probably not. It's probably edibles now. That would be my guess. I don't know if there's any data on that right now, but if it is, it would be self-reported. So, so you can smoke it in. Our age group, we would have called these like joints, right? Now they call them pre-rolls because you don't necessarily roll them anymore. Now they either come, you can buy them pre-rolled for you, or you can buy the empty rolls and you just fill them, but you don't have to roll it. It's almost like packing a cannon. They give you a little stick with it and you just kind of pack it down. I have a picture of it. You can also use, now this is a dated term, bongs. Like we would say bongs, right? Now you would say water pipes. And it is a thing. Like, I've probably mentioned my 24-year-old nephew before. I said bong. He's like, what? Bong? What? Stop it. Okay. So the second way to ingest is you can vape them using vaporizer. Okay. Vaporizing is it's like you see the people with the e-cigarettes, very similar to that. And I'm going to walk you through what that looks like and all those things. That said, remember I said I try not to editorialize. I do on vaping. I don't like vaping. I don't think it's safe. I don't think it's good for you. I don't think you should do it. So it can't be any more plain than that. Mixed or infused, what's that?
I said that's plain.
Pretty plain, right? Yeah. So you can also mix or infused into food or drinks. These are what we call edibles. And there's all different kinds, and I'll show you some pictures of some of them and how they come. All right. All right. So again, just to kind of hammer it home, because I find for example, the folks last night they were perseverating on this. Like half the crowd wanted nothing to do with THC and really wanted to make sure that if they took CBD, it wasn't THC. And the other half understood and was getting mad because the first half didn't seem to understand. But that's okay. Like, let's make sure. So is anyone not clear on this? So CBD is not going to make you impaired. Okay. Then you have medical versus recreational. So these are other, there's a lot of choices around, cannabis and deciding to use it or not. And this is one, is do you want to be a, medical consumer, or do you want to be a recreational consumer? There's pluses and minuses to each one. The medical one is I think it's $350 now to get that, and that's through the state, and that's annual. So there is some expense to it. Now, with that said, you don't pay tax because it's considered a prescription. Well, it is a prescription. So you do save money over the long term, approximately 20%. So it is, financially feasible if, you think it's something that you're going to continue with. You can buy up to 10 ounces in 60 days on medical marijuana. That's a lot. That's a lot of marijuana. So, an ounce might fill, and it's depending. But if you were buying, flour, it would be about a sandwich baggie. Maybe a little less than that. Sometimes it looks less because they vacuum seal it, so it kind of, make it look smaller than it is. That's tracked by the state, so that the state knows, again, because it's a prescription, just like really any other controlled prescription. Then you have recreational. So on the recreational side, you really just need a valid ID. You need to be 21 or older, and that's it. You can buy up to 1 ounce per day, and this I've not been able to get a clear picture of this yet. Is it tracked by the state, or is it tracked by just the store that you happen to be in? I don't know the answer to that. And just the store. I suspect that. So someone says just the store, and I didn't want to risk it to find out. Like, I didn't want to be driving all around and look shady or get on a database or something, So I was like, I'll just kind of figure it out. But so it sounds like you could just go, again, if you ask me, and I'm a classic, I'll be honest, I'm a classic New England liberal person. but I think it's absolutely ridiculous, some of the rules that I mean, that's a stupid rule. You can only buy 1 ounce at a time in one store, but you can drive down the street and buy another. That's just a dumb rule, right? And this is frankly why people get so angry at our government. I mean, there's a lot of other dumb rules around marijuana dispensaries too. They can't have shrubs around ringing the building. They have to be lit 24 hours. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just foolishness. And I don't know, maybe they did that because that's how you pacify the people that are opposed to it, so they'll vote for it. I don't really know, but it's foolishness. It's absolute foolishness. But anyway, I'll stop editorializing. So the tax is, speaking of foolishness, the tax is 20%. So, that's a lot of money. And that's probably the best incentive to get the medical card. Although another incentive is you would have a dedicated supply of a particular strain that you wanted, because they would grow a strain just for you and have it on hand, just like you would at a CVS. So that's always a plus as well. So the history, I won't spend too much time on this, but it goes back to, 6500 BCE. And that's a really long time. But then back then it was used for, medicine and rope and things like that. It arrived, 1850s in the United States, but the first smokable marijuana didn't get here till like 1910, 1915. And it's a Mexican term, marijuana. So it came with Mexican immigrants. And I was kind of proud of myself. I was watching that show, Yellowstone, not Yellowstone, but one of the spin-offs to it. I don't even know what the name is, but they were, there was a scene and they were like smoking pot, and I was like, that's 1880. It wasn't here till 1910. All right, so this is why I feel really that this is an important presentation to have for people, because in some respects it's correcting historical inaccuracies is what it's doing. And I feel bad for a lot of folks here that, like, this was beat into your heads that not only are you going to become addicted and your life is going to suck, you're going to go to hell. I mean, there was all these things. They mixed religion into it. I mean, they threw everything at this thing that they could to get rid of it. And, and I wasn't around in the 50s, but, this is what people were facing. Look at that one on the left. What will your mother say when she finds your corpse? Marijuana, that's just foolish. Yeah. Pot opens the door. To get a skeleton with a needle in his hand. Come on. These make me laugh. Reefer Boy. Yeah. Reefer Madness. These were movies. I just the Devil's Weed. I've heard the Devil's Lettuce. I've heard that one too, right? So now I ask this question, well, not even it's not a question, it's just really a statement. We went from this, doped youth, blah, 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 blah. This is a billboard that says flower to the people. So we went from one to the other. And, it's, maybe we've gone a little too far the other way now. If you think about it, we don't talk about some of the negatives, we only talk about some of the positives, which I'm going to talk about some of the negatives in a little bit. So then timeline to legalization. This is at the federal level. Very interesting. Nixon actually put a commission together, and he said, "I'm going to do what you said, what you recommend." And they unanimously recommended full legalization, and he ignored them and went the other way and made it completely illegal, or got Congress to make it completely illegal, and it remains that way to this day, which is another foolish thing. Just foolish. You have 27 states. This is probably even outdated by now. You probably have 28 or 29 states by now that have voted to legalize this in some way, shape, or form, yet it's still illegal federally, And my concern with a lot of this is not necessarily with us, our age group. My concern with this is the young people. It's teaching the young people that the law is out of touch and that you can just flout it. That's really what it's doing, is they're just, it's not even on their radar that it's illegal federally, like they're not even thinking about that. And that's not necessarily a good way of thinking. So the timeline in Massachusetts was, essentially they started decriminalizing it in the early 2000s, 2008, and that would be more like you got a ticket instead of getting arrested, or, it was confiscated and you were sent on your way, and then the cop had a fun night at home. Or, then in, 2012, we had medical cannabis come along, and then in 2016, recreational cannabis came in, and then in 2 years, the first shop opened, right? So now, in Massachusetts, you have to be 21 or older. You can't use marijuana on public or federal lands, which that's, the public lands is similar to alcohol. Interestingly, landlords and employers can have all their own policies on it. They can do anything they want, which I always find a little interesting that the people have said it should be legal, but now we're allowing some private entities to say it's illegal. Just food for thought, not even really discussion, just kind of food for thought. You're allowed to grow about an ounce or 6 plants. You're allowed to have an ounce in your home. And you can grow 6 plants up to 12 if you have 2 people. All right, so, and that's something I'm probably at some point going to develop a workshop on growing marijuana because I think a lot of people have asked about it. And essentially it's a weed, so it's not that difficult to take care of. It really isn't. So here's where it gets really, really interesting is this bulleted one here. So in 2016, what they did is they decided if your community voted yes, the majority of people voted to legalize marijuana, you have to allow marijuana shops, okay? If your community voted it down, you don't have to allow them. Now, interestingly, there's a couple interesting things happening. So the first thing is those towns that it was voted down and they weren't allowed are now starting to override the voters because they're seeing all the money that they're making in the other. Because the law just says you don't have to allow it. It doesn't say you have to not allow it. Does that make sense? You have to ban it. So now you're seeing like a lot of people are getting angry, like we voted against this and you're still doing it. But there's a lot of money on the table. Now the other issue that you're seeing is this one. Do you see this? You have to issue however many liquor stores you have, liquor licenses you have, not for restaurants, but we would call them a package store. You have to 20%, up to 20% can be, that's how many marijuana retail establishments you have to allow. So 20% of the liquor licenses of your town. Now, I'm from Brockton. We have a liquor store on every corner, right? We do. I mean, we just do. We have liquor stores.
In dispensaries.
We have liquor stores. We have churches, storefront churches and dispensaries now. And what happened is the city council, and I'm not sure in the exact numbers, but let's say it's 10. So 10 applicants came forward to the city council, and the city council approved 6. And that's generally how they do things in the city, in the city of Brockton. They figured 1 in each of the wards, or the sides rather, north, south, east, west, and then a couple for downtown or on the outskirts, something like that. So they picked the 6 best out of the 10 and approved it. Well, the 4 that didn't get it pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and wouldn't let it go and said, we want these issued. You have to issue them because you have to do the 20%. And the city council was, and I'm not a huge fan of the Brockton City Council, but I have to kind of give it to them here. They said to these people, they said, your proposal already wasn't good. It wasn't good enough to be on the winning side. Now you want us to add more, so A, we're going to saturate the market, and B, your competition are going to be the people that were better than you at the outset, and you haven't changed anything. And they said, we don't care. So the council issued it. So now we have marijuana shops everywhere. However, it's been good for the consumer because one of them is very smart. He figured it out. I know he owns a couple car washes in Brockton. So he's a business person, and he figured it out. He's capturing the market. He's undercutting everybody, and he's running these sales, and you can't get into his place. And I see it. 5 years down the road, there's going to be half the number of ones that are in Brockton now. Let's look at money. So since 2018, marijuana sales in Massachusetts have exceeded $3 billion. So, there it is. I mean, that's a pretty big endorsement that we wanted it. Mass, like you said, they charge an extra kind of 10% sales tax and then a 6.25% general sales tax. These revenues go to the Mass General Fund, that's bad. The MBTA, that's good, and the School Building Authority, that's good. And the reason that's good is it's tied to something. Like that money has to go there. Whenever I see I think you agree with, when you see the word general fund, you get nervous with taxes, you know? So I'd prefer if that were gone, but probably won't ever happen. All right, major strains. So there's really only 3 strains that you need to be concerned about or interested in. So the first one is called sativa. So that is very high in THC content, and people will say that that produces an energizing high, or maybe even a head high, where they feel creative, they feel like they're getting things done, you know, that type of thing. A lot of people feel like it can improve focus, you know, things like that. That one, if you're somebody that's prone to anxiety or worrying, or, you know, if you're like, I'm a worrier, I have anxiety, sometimes I lay in bed and I worry about the stupidest things. I'm like, why am I worrying about that? I'm not sleeping. So I know to avoid, you know, something like with those properties. I personally wouldn't do that because it would, you know, and I don't know, it hasn't done it to me in a long time, but I just figure, don't mess with it, you know? So you want to keep that in mind, all right? And again, if you have like a social anxiety thing, that's the one, like when you see people in the movies and they smoke and they're like, oh, and they start getting all paranoid. That's sativa. That's what can happen, okay? Indica. So indica is a strain that's, they consider it more of what they would call a body high. It's a relaxation high. A lot of people will take indica to fall asleep, to stay asleep, to just relax. I have a friend who used to say, I used to play racquetball with him, and he used to say, you know, I come home and I smoke just a little bit, and that's my martini. And that's what he would say, you know. We know now that even that one martini is bad for you, right? Have you seen all the recent research on alcohol? I mean, there's no amount that's good for you, none. All this, 1 glass a day, it helps you. No, it doesn't. It's bad for you. So, you know, you want to be aware of sleepiness with indica. You know, that's one of those kind of, you know, it's one of those things like be careful what you ask for, you just might get it. You know, so you take it and you fall asleep. And then you have hybrids. So hybrids are like, what they do is they pull qualities out of different plants and kind of graft them together to make a hybrid plant, much like you would a tomato. So like a lot of heirloom tomatoes, if you're a gardener, are prone to disease. You know, because they've just been around so long, and you know, we know that, or maybe blossom rot. So what they do is they breed or make a tomato that they breed out that trait that gets it blossom rot, and then they graft it together with the heirloom tomato, and it becomes a hybrid tomato. So now you're getting that heirloom tomato, but it has that quality that you wanted. There's purists that are like would be horrified that I'm even talking about this. Like some people just totally believe in heirlooms and that's it, no hybrids, and they think like hybrids lead to GMO and all that. And I respect that way of thinking too. You know, that's to each his own. But I buy hybrid tomatoes myself and I enjoy them because, you know, there's different ones too. You can get striped ones and, you know, things like that. So hybrid with marijuana is they take percentages of different cannabinoids and different things, and you can look at the label and see it's this percentage indica, this percentage sativa. It might have CBN in it if it's an edible. It might have CBD in it, you know, and they list all that out. There are a couple of other strains. I'm just going to kind of blow through them really quick because you don't really care about them. One makes hemp. It would just be commercially grown for hemp. And one is used as the vehicle to graft other things, other plants onto. So it's really just like a stalk that doesn't do anything. But when we talk about the 3, indica, sativa, and hybrid, I want you to do this. And I want you to take the strains with a grain of salt, okay? And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to act out a little skit, okay? You're going to walk into a dispensary and you're going to start to say, I have trouble sleeping. And you're going to go, I have trouble, and they're going to go, you want indica? Or you're going to come in and say, oh, I want to be creative. You're not going to even get the word creative out. And they're going to go, sativa. That's what they're going to do. And that's not quite true. There are different people react to things differently. So to say that it's all one thing or all the other thing is not, it's disingenuous. It's not true. Different strains have different effects. Different plants have different effects. How they were grown have different effects. Maybe medications you take will affect it differently with you, your own body chemistry, whether you've eaten or not. I mean, there's all kinds of variables there. So to just separate it into sativa and indica is simplistic. Okay, so you just want to think about it a little bit. And when I do do stuff like this, I stick with the hybrid. I just kind of figure, see what what happens. All right. So we have 3 major compounds, and I didn't even update this slide, so the third one has to be there. So THC, we've talked about this, you understand this. People use it they do use it for pain, and you do want to keep that in mind. So if you're somebody who's thinking that it's an either or thing, like CBD for pain and THC to get high, that's not necessarily true either. So there's a lot of people that will take THC for sleep reasons, for therapeutic reasons. We'll talk about some of those, before. And then there's the possible side effects. I would look at the top one, problems with concentration. I mean, sometimes that's the goal. So there's very limited studies around pain and marijuana and how it helps. But the studies that they do have are very good. And one of them is glaucoma patients. It actually relieves pressure in their eyes somehow. I'm not a doctor, I don't know a ton about it, but I remember, reading studies on that 25 years ago. That was probably the beginning of it, or maybe it might have been appetite was the beginning, because it can stimulate your appetite too, and a lot of cancer patients were using it then to kind of stimulate their appetite. And that's the other thing is nausea. It can help with nausea, but again, it can make you drowsy. I've never heard of vomiting in my life, but it was there. This is the Harvard Medical School website I took it from, so I left it. All right, CBD. So the first one I did of these about a year ago was down the Cape. And this slide originally said, so far there is limited evidence that CBD helps anything. And I gave the presentation, and then at the end, this guy that had been way in the back, there was like 40 people, and he made a beeline for me, came right up, and he's like, I want to talk to you about something. And I was like, oh, I knew you were too young to be here. I said, you're not a senior, are you? He goes, no, I own a CBD company. I said, okay. He said, tell me about it. So he's very passionate about it. He had a very bad back injury. CBD really changed his life and helped him. He started a company. He goes around and talks about it. It's great, fine. That's not been my experience, and that's not what I do. Like he kind of does that. That said, he has nudged me a little bit forward. So I softened the language on that, and I've looked at some studies, and there is some very, very promising research. There really is. That said, there is very limited research right now that's like, concrete. Mainly because they haven't finished a lot of the researching, so that, is there probably some really great things coming? Yes. So CBD, so things are happening, they're looking into it. When you want to say that there is scientific evidence, so there is limited scientific evidence that it helps with sleep and anti-anxiety. And the reason I use limited evidence is that is people with diagnosed sleep orders that they gave CBD to and then monitored, and people with diagnosed anxiety disorders that they gave CBD to and monitored. That is a study to me. That's someone credentials has said, you have anxiety, I'm giving you this, and then I'm going to follow up to see if you still have anxiety. To me, that's credible. Most of the studies that we read about in the newspapers are self-reported studies. And it's really a researcher, usually a college kid, just calling around saying, hey, how do you feel about marijuana? Oh, I love it. Okay, great. That's not necessarily a very good study. I guess it's good if you're in the marijuana industry, you just want to sell stuff. But there is stuff in the pipeline. There absolutely is. Think about these cannabinoids. You remember back somewhere in the 90s, it was red wine. Everything was red wine, and it was flavonoids. Remember that? Oh, the flavonoids, they're good for your heart, they're good for your circulation. You should have 2 glasses of red wine a day, and we give it to the elderly people in the nursing homes. It's good for them. It's all crap. None of that came true. And they kept saying these flavonoids, we're going to pull all these, there's thousands of them, and all, you're going to have this, you're going to have that. And did they come up with a few things? Yep. To me, the most impressive thing that I've read, well, it's not impressive when you think about the money they've spent. You get any good effect that they're trying to find in wine, you get from grape juice. You know, if you think about that. So you know, I mean, why are we wasting all this money and all this, you know, when we know alcohol's not good for you? We know this. So let's see what happens here with these things. So now there's a new one that you'll see in edibles and things like that, and it's called CBN. So just look at the difference, because a lot of people miss that. So see, this one is cannabinol. See that? Or binol. I'm not really sure how you say it, binol. And the other one was cannabidiol. See it? So they're different. They're different compounds. Okay. So this one, you'll see a percentage of this one in edibles. And this one is primarily has a sedative effect. It is claiming, or people or researchers are claiming, that 5 milligrams of CBN is like taking 10 milligrams of Valium. I don't know if that's true or not. I've never taken Valium, so I don't know what Valium does for you. If that is true, you know, okay, maybe you should switch to CBD or CBN rather than Valium. I don't know, but something to think about. It does have what we would call psychoactive properties, CBN, but the worst thing that's going to happen is it's going to make you fall asleep. You're not going to have a euphoric feeling, or you're not going to get high from it. So you can take CBD in a variety of ways. So you can take it as an oil. And with an oil, they call those tinctures. And I have a picture of one towards the end that you can go buy. And they're just a little dropper bottle, just like that. And you right under your tongue, and you just put one little drop, gone. Some people put a drop in like their tea or something like that, you know. I was thinking about maybe making soup with some CBD in it, selling that. We'll see. You know, maybe I'll get rich. Yeah.
Does CBD have THC in it?
No, see, this is why I try to hammer this point home. So no, they're two completely separate things. You will not get high from CBD. I promise.
But I use an ointment that
Yep.
has 0.%
Okay.
THC.
So, okay, that's, again, you're right on point. Very good. It's the same as non-alcoholic beer, because it's a process that they have to pull the alcohol out. So there's always a very tiny little percentage in there of alcohol that's not, you know, it's not going to impair you. Same thing here. There's not all CBD, but a lot of CBD still has a very small percentage of THC in it, but it's not going to impair you unless you took ungodly amounts of it, and definitely not through an ointment. Okay. All right. So, any other questions on CBD? Because it's important. Because, by the way, it's not cheap. You know, and we'll talk. Yeah, I know. I'm sure you do. You know, so we'll talk about that too. Okay. But I just kind of like to, you know, there are no miracles. This is a book that says it's a miracle, but it's not. There are no miracles. So I changed this to moderate scientific evidence. So now there is moderate scientific evidence that it can improve sleep disorders, some muscle spasticity related to MS, and anxiety. And again, those are diagnosed. You know, someone has MS, they're diagnosed, and they improve on this regimen. That's a study that I can believe in. You know. Now here we go with people report. And again, they report that oral CBD helps better with pain and sleep. So taking it, either a tincture or something like that, you know, through the mouth, is reported as better. The safest way to take it is orally. There are lots of studies being conducted, and then I do always purchase it from a licensed dispensary. You can buy CBD cream, you can buy it at a gas station, right? I've had, so you know, like Facebook, yeah. So you know, like I have people like, you know, like Chris, that come to me and say, oh, I want to teach some workshops and things like that. I cannot tell you how many jokers I've had with CBD, like some little, a little thimbleful that they make. All they do is they get CBD oil and coconut cream, whatever it is, cocoa cream, whatever it is, and they just mix it together and put it in a little thing, and they print out a label in their home computer, and they're like, isn't that professional? Like, no, it's not. And you don't know where that CBD is coming from, you don't know anything about it. Spend the money at a dispensary. Spend the money, or somewhere that you trust. If it's not a dispensary, because it doesn't have to be a dispensary. So if you find a brand that you trust, buy directly from them if you can. Talk to people about it. I don't use CBD. I've tried it and it hasn't helped me. But I have friends who swear by it. So, but it's, I'm the consumer, the type of, like, I like to develop a relationship with whoever I'm buying things from. If it's something that I'm using continually, for example, when I did the Taste of Greece, I work with that Greek store in Brockton. I only buy from them. I know what I'm getting. I pay a little bit more, but I know what it is. I don't have to worry about the quality. It's going to be there when I want it. I feel the same way about any of the stuff surrounding marijuana at some point, or cannabis. At some point, you want to start becoming brand loyal. It has to kind of shake out eventually, but just stay away from the gas stations and the flea markets and the places like that. All right. So again, we talked about this. This is the promising research. Interesting. COVID-19, there is some strong research. I'm close to saying it helps with inflammation, COVID-19 with lungs. I'm very close to saying that that's true. So, we'll see. Muscle pain, and then of course we know sleep and anxiety. So now they're kind of seeing does that apply to people with undiagnosed problems. All right, so let's look at a little reality here. So some of the negatives, and these are some of the things that, people that are in the business don't always talk. Some of them do, and I don't mean to disparage anyone in the business at all. And I use the, and people laugh when I say this, but it's actually not funny, but I use the car salesman analogy. And the analogy is, a car salesman is very knowledgeable about cars, and you'll talk to them and you'll pick their brain, but you always know kind of at the end, they're trying to sell you something. So you're gonna, maybe get another source of information too before you make your decision. And that's how I feel about dispensaries. They're gonna try their best to give you that, but just any organization, it's hard for them to work against their own self-interests sometimes, so you wanna just kind of keep that in mind. What is missing from the conversation is the fact that 1 in 10 people who use marijuana will become addicted to it. And those are the 1 in 10 people that are substance use disorder people, Those are people that are probably going to get addicted to almost, anything. Not always, but, I have a lot of friends that have given up, alcohol and replaced it with sugar. They're constantly eating candy all day long and they gain a lot of weight. But you look at that and say, well, is it better than, if they were a problem drinker? I guess maybe it is better. I don't know. When you start with marijuana before age 18, your chances of addiction are 1 in 6. And I bring that up, and I also show visuals here because I also know a lot of you folks are grandparents. And you might be, babysitting or have people over your house, or you might live with younger, kids, younger people. And you never know what's out there. So it helps to have some pictures and things like that to see what's going on. So we'll get to those in a second. Marijuana can cause an IQ loss of 8 points when people start using it at a young age. And the thing is, these IQ points don't come back. So a lot of things like you hear, with not real bad alcoholics, but, alcoholics that eventually kind of slow down, like the brain cells will regrow a little bit. Not all, not always, but these don't. So I put in parentheses there, harmful to the adolescent brain. It is. And that is it's not talked about, it's glossed over. You talk to a kid today, not only do they think it's legal for them, and it's not, they think it's legal for them, they think it solves all life's problems. Yeah. They do, they really do. We'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. Now, this is what's kind of interesting. Studies link marijuana use to depression, suicidal planning, psychotic episodes, but we don't know if marijuana causes that, or at the time most of these studies were done, they were illegal and maybe people were already depressed and seeking out marijuana to self-medicate. Maybe they were depressed because marijuana was illegal and they felt like they were breaking the law. You know, there's all different reasons for that. Now here, this last bullet point is really interesting. Research shows that people who use marijuana are more likely to have relationship problems, worse educational outcomes, lower achievement, and reduced life satisfaction. Here's the cool thing. I have to fix this, so this is actually the next slide, because it's actually a couple slides in, but I realize it belongs here as the next one. It's completely the opposite for people in our age group. People 55 and older report more life satisfaction, more activity, better relationships, right? So let's kind of talk about that. But first, let me just pick on the bud tenders. So this is not what the bud tenders look like. I just use this as that. So this is, I just want you to, kind of get it. Again, they're a good source of information. They shouldn't be your sole source of information. Okay? All right. Reliability, these are the websites that I use. You're always looking for a website that ends in like .edu or .gov. Even the .orgs, the orgs, you got to be a little careful of them, because you can be a nonprofit that advocates for something, right? That could be your mission. So if your mission is to advocate for the health benefits of marijuana, you might not necessarily show the negative. So you would just want to kind of keep that in mind. All right, so now back to the seniors. By every single measure, it is not only accepted and on the rise among seniors, they are thriving. They are thriving on this, okay? An increasing percentage use it exclusively for therapeutic purposes. I think that's the difference. The dumbass young people are using it to tune out of life. The older people are using it to enhance their life. Whatever enhance means to you. It might mean my knees hurt and I'm doing this. I can't sleep, so I'm going to have a little THC at night. Or I want to be social with my friends and go out and, maybe have some edibles and giggle and laugh a little bit. But you don't make that about your life. You don't do it every day, all day, So that, to me, and again, that's me. That's Dave's take on all this. I could be completely wrong. That last one there, growing body of research shows that the use of cannabis by older adults is associated with improvements in their overall quality of life and greater rates of physical activity. That's pretty powerful. That's my grandmother. No, it's all right, so let's look at some visuals, okay? So again, this would be, I call it, I've called it the bong. These days in the vernacular is water pipe. That's a pre-roll in the middle. So that you can buy one of two ways. You can buy it exactly like that. Comes in like a little test tube thing. Places are positioning themselves for varying levels of customer service too. For example, there's not a lot of customer service at Greenheart. You go, they're at the counter, and that's fine. It's passable. But some other places, you go in and it's like a waiting room, and they come up to you with an iPad, and you actually sit next to them and you feel classy, like doing all that. But you're also probably paying twice as much. So you can also buy these empty and fill them with your own with your own flower that you either purchased or grew. And they come, fully shaped, and you just kind of pack them in. That's just a pipe, just a glass pipe, but you can have a pipe out of wood, plastic, metal. There's all different ones, but these are the most common ones that you would see, All right, here's the vaporizing. So this is the one I just, when this first started kind of hitting like my age group and my circle of friends, everyone was doing it. And they were like, oh my God, it's great, there's no smoke, blah, 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 blah. And within 3 or 4 months, every single one of them had been like, oh my God, I'm coughing all the time, I don't feel good, I'm wheezing, that's not for me. And I can't tell you how many people I've talked to about that. And the thing is, how it works is this is the oil, and it's called a cart or a cartridge, and you screw it in there, and this is the heating element, and there's a battery right there. and you hold the button for like 3 seconds and it heats up the oil into a fine mist or a vapor. And then you just suck it in. Again, looks a lot like an e-cigarette when you see people doing those. But here's the thing, not highly regulated. You don't know what's in it. It has a mix of cannabinoids and terpenes are just flavorings, but they're natural. So that terpenes are pretty much okay. But various solvents, whenever I see, and that's actually various solvents, like in the ingredients list. You know, I don't want various salt. I don't know about you. But, you know, thinning agents, other flavoring, like unnatural flavor, you know, things like that. So I avoid these. I recommend people to avoid these. I just don't think that they're good. And I think, you know, a couple years down the road, it's going to come out that this was really bad for you. All right? I'm going to scare you off enough? All right. I used to work with a guy. He said to me, we were talking about smoking, and he said, I never smoked once in my life, never even tried it. And I said, really, you never tried it? And he said, yep. And he said, I attribute it to my mother. And I said, why? And he said, well, all my life, from the very first doctor's appointment that I ever had, she would sit with me and with the doctor and say to the doctor, he's allergic to tobacco. He's allergic to tobacco. She said, and when I turned 45, she told me it was a lie. I was not allergic to tobacco. I said, you had a smart mom, right? That would solve a lot of problems right there. All right, so edibles. This is probably the most popular. This is probably more or less what I would recommend for most people in this room, whether you're thinking of CBD, THC, or a combination of the two. Okay? They're mostly baked goods and candy, but you can make anything into an edible. You could a drink. You can, crackers. There's all kinds of things. The effects with edibles can last longer. Yep.
I was just wondering, if someone has MS and tremors, can something like an edible help with that, or do they have to go to the oil itself?
No. You could certainly try an edible. Absolutely, you could try an edible. Yeah, but I would talk to your doctor or whomever. And
Does he have to get a prescription?
no, you don't. But it might behoove him to get a prescription because he'd save some money.
Yeah.
And he might get some more information about what strains are out there for him. I would probably, if you have a diagnosed medical condition and you even have an inkling that THC or CBD is going to help you, I would do it in a minute.
Does the doctor have to be certified for it? Because it's someone I know, and he asked his doctor, and he
So,
can't do it.
so I'm unclear on that. I guess there sounds like there's a training or a certificate or some type of an endorsement that doctors have to get. Okay, but let's look at the flip side of that now. Now, dispensaries have doctors on site that will write you a prescription right there so you can buy from them. Some of them will do it on Zoom. So that kind of cheapens the idea of having to have a doctor too. If you ask me, maybe I'm old-fashioned. I don't know. I probably am. You got to think about the sugar, think about the salt. There's actually some sodium in these. We'll look at that too. The effects can be stronger. Okay, you have to be careful. You do. You have to be careful. So my advice here. So one dose, if you're thinking of it, and this is for THC. Okay, this is for THC. If one dose is 10 milligrams, take 5. Just break it in half. Clear an afternoon, or whatever it is, whatever you're going to do. And if it's at night, sit in your chair, take half, wait an hour. See what happens. If there's nothing, you don't feel anything at all, which you might say, I don't feel anything, but it's it might be doing something, but that's okay. But if you feel fine or you don't feel anything, take the other half. All right? And then most people just end up going right to bed. Yeah.
Depending on your weight, does that have anything to do with how much you take?
So, it does and it doesn't. It more depends on how quickly it's delivered to your body, I think. I have friends that will take 100 milligrams and eat a whole can of gummies and not look impaired at all and not say they don't feel impaired at all. So I don't necessarily know the answer to that. My answer is always everyone's different. Yeah. Find what your kind of zone is, sweet spot. There you go. I have a friend who was going through a really rough time, and it was his marriage was breaking up and all that stuff. So he went and he bought a bunch of gummies, and he had another friend call him up and said, hey, why don't you go down to my Cape house for the weekend? I need someone to watch the dogs anyway, and there's 4 little dogs. He said, so why don't you just go down, spend the weekend with the dogs, chill, relax, whatever. So he calls me and he goes, I've got a problem. He left the edibles out and they were gone. So I said, what are you going to do? He goes, well, I'm looking for which dog falls asleep. So, okay. They were fine. The dogs were fine. But that's a lesson with children. Your point is well taken, so it's something you lock away, you keep it out, because it does look like candy, and it's happened. You've seen it in the news. You've seen it in the news that children have. Yeah. Oh yeah. My nephew is 3, and he calls them gubby bears. Gubby. All right, so it can be longer. It can take a while for the effects, to be really, really safe, 30 minutes to 2 hours. But if you haven't felt anything, within an hour or so, I think you're good to try a little more. You can also make edibles at home. It's very easy to do. All you do is infuse the marijuana into the butter and then just cook with the butter. Strain it out and cook with the butter. That's it. So that's a label that you would see, okay? THC, 10 milligrams, so this is per serving, so it's probably like a cookie or something. CBD, 8.9 milligrams, and then see the newer one down there, other cannabinoids, CBN, 0.02. So if you're somebody, this is where the decision making comes in, right? So if you're somebody, you say, I don't want THC at all. Look for one that has no THC, okay? So if you want to cross that right off your list, there's plenty of those. There's plenty of ones that are just CBDs there. Then look at the percentage here of this CBN. If you're looking for sleep, the higher that number is, the more of that you're going to get. Okay? And they'll give you, every single one will give you the percentage like this. It tells you, the calories, fat, carbs, protein, sodium. Now, that's not a lot. I mean, it's not ideal, but look at the carbohydrates, 18 grams. That's probably one cookie, right? Now, a lot of people will eat 3. Now you're up into, so that's, where are you at? That's one meal. That's the carbs for one meal. If you're following like a low sugar or watching your carbs or something like that, 3 of those cookies is a meal. So think, you want to think about that. 3 of those cookies is a lot of sugar, and the gummies probably have more sugar,
Plus 30 milligrams of THC.
Yeah.
3 cookies.
Right, yeah, plus, but,
Going on a ride.
yeah, well, but again, some people are, some people aren't, so it's, each person is different,
How is the sodium on that?
So the sodium here is pretty high. It's 60 milligrams, So this is how you make the can of butter. If you ever wanted to do it, you would just go buy marijuana flower or grow it, and then from there you would just melt it into the butter and let it kind of simmer for like 2 to 3 hours, and then all you're going to do is strain it out and then just refrigerate it and use it as an ingredient. So I wanted to do this to see if I could do it, and I did. And it worked perfectly. All I did was this, and then I just bought some instant brownie mix and made the mix according to the directions. The house stunk to high heaven. My mom was alive then, so I did it when she was away for the weekend. I'm 50 years old, and I'm like waiting for my mother to go away so I could do that, But I'm going to end with a story about my mom and marijuana too. So that's how you do it. It's not hard. It really is not hard to do. And I just like to show people that because the edibles can get really expensive over time too. So, you might be, if you're someday down the road, if you're someone that likes to cook and, you find something that works for you, you might want to make your own, And that's, you don't really care about that. Tinctures. This is CBD, just CBD right here. See, it says pure CBD. So that's probably what, if I understand correctly, that's more or less what you're thinking about. All right, so but now that bottle, like that's $120, However, some, different places, different brands. However, that should last you a good long time. It's just one drop that you would do. So that should last you at least a few months, I would think. But you can get, again, all the mixtures. You can get the percentage if you want CBN in there, if you want CBD, if you want THC with it, you know. You just have to really think about it. By the way, that's the other thing. You can order online for pickup at a lot of these places too. And if you don't know how to do that, it might be worth it to ask someone to help you and show you, because that's a really great way of learning too. Because you can kind of click through and look at things and say, oh, what's in this, what's in that? Whereas sometimes when you're in the dispensary, you feel rushed, you know, or you feel like there's a line, or you feel uncomfortable there. So sometimes it's nice to just kind of sit at home and be able to look yourself. Yeah.
Do these have a shelf life?
I don't believe the oil has a shelf. Well, they're gonna tell you yes. You know, just like the spices, people tell you buy new spices every 3 months, and I've had spices for 5 years that are good, you know. So 10, yeah. So so there are shelf lives. You know, I take those, you know, with a grain of salt. Really, the only thing you really have to worry about is the food ones. You know, getting stale, you know, things like that.
As long as you store those in a cool, dry place,
Yeah.
they're good for.
Yeah.
They're good.
So here's this is a grow operation. And you can see this one's on wheels down the bottom. You see that? This particular one rolls things around from room to room for lights, for drying, for watering. Other places leave the marijuana in there and move the equipment around on the ceiling. You know, big giant lights are on tracks and, you know, hoses and things like that. You know, here's one where you see like the employees, they have to, you know, they dress like this. They all do, they have like clear pocketbooks and stuff so that they can kind of monitor them as they go in and out. So that's a mock-up of one. That's one in, I think it was Boston. So that's, you know, that one you kind of go in and you order at here. That one reminds me of like a cell phone store. You know, that's what it looks like, you know. But then you have the other end of the spectrum, ones that look more like a smoke shop, you know, or a little convenience store, you know, so that you have ones like that. You also have ones that will do, like some of the medical places will do this, you know, and your particular strain is there. And then the vast majority of them look like this. You know, you go in and like the Green Heart that we were talking about is just it's white and glass, that's it. And, you know, there's just glass things around it, and there's just a line, and you just wait, and you go up to the bud tender, and they're behind a counter like these guys are. So there are absolute fantastic deals if you want to look for them. Like, you have to really work at it, but they're out there because this is the mark. I would put this where cell phones were in the 90s, where companies are just trying to capture the market. So they're giving away, like I had a friend who worked for Verizon back in the early 90s, and he made so much money because they just wanted to capture the market. And so they paid their salesmen tons of money to grab everybody. Then they fired everybody, you know, and had all the business. You know, that's going to happen here. But the consumer is going to work. It's working for the consumer right now because there's too many of them. Some final thoughts. So the stigma is gone. So that's the first thing. Like, I don't want people worrying about what will people think. And I always end this, you know, with a story about my mom. I was over at my mom's house, and we were upstairs, and she had a very long hallway, and we were hanging pictures in the hallway. And they had to be just so. One had to be down here, and then the next one had to be here, and the next one had to be here. We measured it, you know, had to be right. So we're halfway through, and we need a pencil. And at the time, my sister was still living at home. So my mother says, she goes to go in my sister's room. And I'm like, oh God. And sure enough, she comes out and she's got a sandwich baggie, and it's got seeds and stems and nothing else. And she looks at me and she goes, grass. Grass? Who calls it grass? So then, my mother was Italian, so she starts working herself into a frenzy, right? She's got drugs in my house. I can't have this. I'm throwing her out. She can't live here. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, you know, and I'm just trying to nail the thing, and I'm listening, and I'm like, she'll wear herself out eventually. So she's mad. That's it. She's gone. When she gets home from work today, I'm packing her stuff. She's gone. So finally she took a breath. And I went, Ma, relax. It's not a problem. Then I just kind of went back to work. And a little while goes by, you know, maybe 30 seconds to a minute, silence. And all of a sudden she goes, wait a minute, you sound like you approve. So I thought then, and I was in my 30s, so I was like, all right, I'm an adult here. Well, I got to do this. So I just said, you know what, Ma? I said, you know my friend Steve? Oh, yeah, Steve. I went to high school with Steve. He's my best friend. He's been my best friend. He's texted me 3 times since I've been standing here. Been my best friend all my life. So I said, Ma, you remember Steve? Oh, yeah, I love Steve. He's great. I said, you know how he comes over every Saturday night to my house? She goes, yep. What do you think we're doing, Ma? Less than 10 years later, my mother comes to me and says, all my friends are doing marijuana. I want to try it. So I don't know if she did or not, because I said, oh, we don't have that kind of relationship, Ma. Go with your friends. Go, you know. But so that's, I kind of end with that story because that's how times have changed. However, that second bullet point stands true. The hype is here. So it looks a little like we've swung too far in one direction to me. Most people probably disagree with me, and that's okay. But it does look like we've, all we have right now is rose-colored glasses. Marijuana's great. It solves all these problems. Everyone's happy. It's got da-da-da-da-da. I'm not convinced that that's all going to come true. But I'm encouraged when I see the studies about the older population that's using it, judiciously. So that's the presentation, and I hope you enjoyed yourselves. Thank you.